Hi guys, it's time for some whole number multiplication and division. Definition of division. Just like we used addition to define subtraction, we're going to use multiplication to define division. A divided by B is C if B times C is A. So 20 divided by 4 is 5 because 4 times 5 is 20. Now, I had a heck of a time finding the division symbol. So if you can't see the symbol here, remember it's the usual one that looks like a dash with a dot above and below. And I think I have fixed this problem, but just in case. Some examples. 10 divided by 2 is 5 because, well, 2 times 5 is 10. And the terminology, the first number we call the dividend. This is actually a strange thing. Every Alaskan should know the word dividend, right? We all get our permanent fund dividend for living in Alaska, but the dividend really should be the big pot of money before they chop it up and give it to the citizens of Alaska rather than what we individually get. So we're really getting the permanent fund quotient. Right? The dividend is the big pot of money that they've invested for Alaskans. Divisor would be, in this example, how many people are eligible to receive the dividend. The quotient is what we get each on ourselves. So the properties of division, I wish I had some nice sound effect that would go wah wah, because the division operation has none of the cool properties like plus and times, like identity, associative property, commutative property, and closure. Just like subtraction, there's none of those. You've got to be really careful when you divide what the order is, where the parentheses go. So now to the models for teaching division. The first one, I saw lots of worksheets like this when I was a kid. 12 divided by 3 is what? Because what times 3 is 12. The repeated subtraction model is also called the measurement model, and this one will be very useful when we get to fractions and also here. So 12 divided by 3 asks the question, how many 3's can be subtracted from 12? So I take 12, I take off a 3, I get 9, take off another 3, I get 6, take off a 3 a third time, I get 3, take off 3 a fourth time, I get 0. So I subtracted 3 exactly 4 times. That means the quotient is 4. So I have noticed here that this could help us estimate if we had 1 and 1/5, and I wanted to find out what happens when you divide by a quarter. Well, you should think about it, and we'll deal with that more later. Now, in contrast to that measurement model is what we call the partition model. Before, we had 12 divided by 3, and we said, how many 3's can I take away? Now I'm going to take 12 things, put them in 3 groups, and find out how many groups there are. I just said that backwards. Let's try that again. The partition model. 12 divided by 3 asks, if I break up 12 objects into 3 piles, how many in a pile? In measurement, we take piles of 3 and ask how many piles there are. So measurement, how many piles are there? Partition, I know how many piles, how many in each pile. There's the difference. So here are some story problems, and I would like you to stop, read these, and decide which model we have. Okay, I hope you really paused because I didn't make a new slide. If not, pause now. Okay, so let's see the answers. Jane has 15 cookies. She wants to give all of them to 5 of her friends. So I'm going to make 5 piles. I want to know how many per pile. That's called partition model. The second one is a cookie recipe calls for 2 eggs per batch, and I have 10 eggs. So basically I'm going to subtract off 2 eggs, then I'm going to subtract off another 2 eggs, then I'm going to subtract off another one. And so I subtract 2 5 times. That's repeated subtraction, also known as measurement. And the third one is a little tricky. A lot of people call the partition model the divvy up model, and they talk about dealing cards. But this is not quite the same. We're cheating a bit. We're giving whole hands out, 4 cards apiece. So I'm subtracting 4 over and over and over again. This one would actually be measurement. Last slide. Why can't we divide by 0? Everybody who teaches division, every math teacher should know and understand why. And it all comes down to the definition. If A divided by B is C, then B times C is A. Suppose A isn't 0. So we write this thing, we're going to divide by 0, so we'll put in 0 for B. A divided by 0 equals C means that 0 times C is A. Now remember, A isn't 0. But 0 times C is A. 0 times C is always 0. How's that going to work, right? A is not 0. 0 times C is 0, and they're supposed to be the same. This will never work. So that's why A divided by 0 makes no sense if A isn't 0 itself. Now, what about A being 0? And then we talk about 0 divided by 0. And it has kind of the opposite problem. We again write down what division means. 0 divided by 0 is C. That means that 0 times C equals 0. And what will go in there? Well, basically everything, right? 0 times 1 is 0. 0 times pi over 3 is 0. 0 times negative 57 is 0. There are so many choices that work that it's not clear which one to take, so we can't define it. So there we go. It's